Welcome to the startling reality of 2026, where the global music landscape has shifted on its axis and the definition of a superfan has been completely rewritten. We used to think of K-pop fandoms as the playground of the youth, a chaotic mix of teenagers and young adults screaming at airports. But look around you now, the demographics have exploded in the most heartwarming and unexpected way possible. The screams are louder, the devotion is deeper, and the love is coming from a generation that society often overlooks. We are talking about the Silver Revolution, the massive surge of fans over the age of 60 who have found solace, joy, and a second wind of life through 7 men from South Korea. BTS is no longer just a boy band, they are a cross-generational healing phenomenon. But here is the burning question that has sociologists and music critics scratching their heads in disbelief. Who is the absolute king of the Silver Hearts? Which member has silently built an empire of adoration among the world's most wise and experienced generation? Is it the intellectual leader with his philosophical depth? The golden maknae with his universal charm? Or is it someone whose specific brand of tenderness transcends language barriers for the elderly in a way we never saw coming? Prepare yourselves because the data is in, the stories are heartbreakingly beautiful, and the member sitting at number 1 is a revelation that will rewrite everything you thought you knew about popularity. Fasten your seatbelts, open your hearts, and let's dive into the emotional roller coaster of the BTS members with the most elderly fans worldwide in 2026. Number 7. Jungkook. Can you believe your eyes right now? Or do you need to adjust your screens because the shockwave of this placement is already hitting us hard? Yes, you are reading this correctly. The global pop titan, the man who brought the world to its knees with his solo triumphs, sits at the entry point of our silver list, and the reason is as complex and fascinating as the man himself. In 2026, Jungkook is no longer just a K-pop idol. He is a certified legend, a global icon who rivals the greatest pop stars in history. But, ironically, it is this very explosive, high-octane energy that lands him at number 7 among the elderly demographic. We have to dive deep into the psychology of the Silver Army to understand this grandson paradox. You see, for fans in their 70 seconds and 80 seconds from the sun-drenched porches of Florida to the quiet tea houses of Busan, Jungkook represents an energy that is blindingly beautiful but sometimes exhausting to keep up with. He is the symbol of eternal youth, a kinetic force of nature that moves at the speed of light. When we interviewed a group of 80-year-old fans at a community center in Zurich, they described watching a Jungkook performance as drinking a double shot of espresso when you just wanted chamomile tea. They adore him absolutely. But his musical direction in 2026, which leans heavily into high-tempo, sophisticated Western pop and intricate, lightning-fast choreography, sometimes creates a slight disconnect with a generation that craves melody over beat and stillness over movement. But don't mistake this ranking for a lack of love. Oh no, the affection here is fierce, protective, and deeply maternal. The narrative of Jungkook among the elderly is one of overcoming prejudice. Remember the tattoos? In 2026, the stigma has largely faded, but for this specific generation, Jungkook was the bridge. We heard countless stories of conservative grandmothers who initially scoffed at his ink, seeing it as rebellion, only to be completely disarmed by his bowing, his Bambi eyes, and his unwavering politeness that seems to be hardwired into his DNA. He is the rebel grandson they never knew they wanted. There is a tear-jerking report from a nursing home in Sapporo where an elderly woman with dementia, who often forgets her own children's names, points to Jungkook's picture and says, "That is the boy with the stars on his skin. He eats well." It's a connection built not necessarily on his chart, topping hits like 7 or Standing Next to You, which, let's be honest, they are often played a bit too loud for their hearing aids, but on his mukbang lives? Yes, you heard that right. In 2026, Jungkook's live streams where he simply cooks and eats have become primetime television for the lonely elderly. They don't care about the Billboard Hot 100, they care that he is eating a warm meal. They worry about him like he is their own flesh and blood. He triggers that primal biological instinct to nurture. However, why is he number 7? It comes down to relatability versus admiration. The elderly admire Jungkook as a superstar, a distant, shining prince, but they don't always relate to the themes of modern, Fast-paced romance and club nights that permeate his solo discography. He is the idol they brag about to their neighbors. Look at my handsome grandson, he is taking over the world. But he isn't necessarily the one whose voice lulls them to sleep at night when the arthritis acts up or when the loneliness sets in. That spot is reserved for members with a different sonic frequency. Jungkook is the excitement, the fireworks, the adrenaline rush that proves they are still alive, but for a demographic that seeks comfort, stability, and nostalgia, and the golden maknae is sometimes just too golden, too bright, and too fast. He is the member they pray for, the one they want to feed, the one whose military discharge they celebrated with feasts. But he remains the global superstar first, and the intimate companion second. As we move up this list, we will see how the dynamic shifts from watching a star to holding a hand, and unfortunately for Jungkook, then his sheer magnitude makes him untouchable in a way that puts him at number 7. But make no mistake, being last on this list is still a triumph, representing millions of silver-haired fans who have learned to love modern pop solely because of Jungkook. Number 6. Min Yoongi. The Quiet Philosopher's Trap. A rough diamond wrapped in silk. If number 7 was a case of too fast, number 6 is the captivating case of too real, and we are, of course, talking about the genius, the heavy-hearted poet, the man who carries the weight of the world in his lyrics, Suga, or as the Silver Generation affectionately calls him, the wise cat of Daegu. Now, you might be scratching your head wondering how Min Yoongi, the member with perhaps the most mature, settled, and old soul energy, is sitting at number 6 and not in the top 3. It seems counterintuitive, doesn't it? In 2026, Yoongi is 33 years old, and he has aged like fine wine, embracing a calm, producer-centric lifestyle that screams stability. So, what is the barrier? It is the sonic wall. We have to be honest about the musical preferences of the 65-plus demographic. While they absolutely adore Min Yoongi, the person, they still struggle mightily with Min Yoongi, the rapper. We spoke to a focus group of grandmothers in the suburbs of Paris who have framed photos of Yoongi on their mantles next to their grandchildren. They told us, with a mix of adoration and confusion, we love it when he speaks, we cry when he smiles, but when he starts the fast, angry talking, rapping, we have to turn the volume down for our hearts. This is the tragedy of Rank 6. The August D persona, with its raw, guttural aggression and heavy hip-hop beats, is a sonic landscape that is often too jagged for ears that grew up on Edith Piaf, Frank Sinatra, or trot music. But, and this is a massive but, his ranking is saved from being lower because of one specific cultural phenomenon that took over the world between 2023 and 2026, Suchwita. This drinking talk show became the Oprah for the elderly fan. It bridged the gap. They might not blast Daichwita at their bingo nights, but they religiously watch him drink whiskey and talk about life. They see his manners. They see how he turns his head away when he drinks with elders, a Confucian tradition that scores massive points with conservative Asian fans and respectful Western seniors alike. In South Korea, Yoongi has inadvertently become the ideal son-in-law for the elderly. His gruff, gyeongsang-do bluntness, that tsundere style, where he acts cold but is actually warm, reminds millions of grandmothers of their own stoic husbands or fathers. It feels nostalgic. It feels real. We found a fascinating subculture of fans in a retirement community in Arizona who call themselves the Lil Meow Meows, a name they adopted without fully understanding the internet meme culture, but simply because they see him as a wounded stray cat they want to adopt. They know about his shoulder surgery. They know about his depression. Unlike the younger generation who relates to the angst, the older generation relates to the survival. They look at Yoongi and see a man who has eaten more salt than rice, suffered hardships, and they respect him deeply for it. There is a profound emotional report from 2025 regarding a 92-year-old war veteran in the UK who found solace in Yoongi's track Snooze. Even though he couldn't understand the rap flow, reading the translated lyrics about resting and it being okay to fall down resonated with his own nearing end of life. He famously wrote a letter to Big Hit saying, "This young man understands the fatigue of existence better than people my own age. That is the power of Suga. He transcends the genre barrier through sheer lyrical philosophy." However, the intensity of his rap performance keeps him at number 6. If he released an album of just him playing the piano and whispering about the weather, he might be number 1. But But Yoongi is an artist who refuses to compromise his hip-hop roots, and that integrity is exactly why the elderly respect him, even if they can't quite dance to his beat. He is the member they listen to when they want to think, not when they want to smile, and that specific heavy niche keeps him firmly, yet honorably, at number 6. Number 5. Kim Namjoon. If you thought the leader of the world's biggest boy band would be leading the charge in the top 3, think again, because the placement of Kim Namjoon at number 5 is perhaps the most intellectually stimulating twist of 2026. We are entering the realm of the sophisticated silver, a demographic of elderly fans who are not screaming at concerts but are quietly nodding in approval at art galleries, museums, and botanical gardens. In 2026, RM has transcended the role of a K-pop idol to become a global cultural icon, a figure who rivals the prestige of diplomats and UNESCO ambassadors, and this specific aura has acted as a magnet for the intelligentsia of the elderly population. But why is he at number 5? Why not higher? The answer lies in the fascinating tug-of-war between his image and his sound. Let's paint the picture. Imagine a retired literature professor in Oxford or a tea master in Kyoto. These are people who value silence, depth, and patience. They have found their spirit animal in Kim Namjoon. The phenomenon known as namjooning, the act of visiting museums, reading books in parks, and riding bicycles has inadvertently become the retirement manifesto for millions of seniors worldwide. We have reports from the National Museum of Modern and Contemporary Art in Korea stating that in 2026, visitors over the age of 70 increased by a staggering 300%, and when asked why, they simply show a photo of RM standing in front of a painting. He has validated their hobbies. For a generation that often feels invisible or considered boring by the youth, seeing a global superstar in his 30 seconds embrace the quiet contemplation of bonsai trees and abstract art is nothing short of revolutionary. We spoke to a 75-year-old bonsai enthusiast from Oregon who said, "I have been pruning trees for 40 years, and my grandchildren thought it was watching paint dry." Then this young man, Namjoon, posts a photo of a baby plum tree, and suddenly I am the coolest grandfather at the dinner table. This is the RM effect. He connects the generations through the appreciation of the old, the traditional, and the slow. He is the bridge between the digital speed of the 21st century and the analog soul of the 20th century. Furthermore, we cannot ignore the statesman factor. For the elderly generation, who grew up respecting authority, suits, and eloquence, RM's speeches at the UN and his articulate manner of speaking in interviews hit a sweet spot that no other member can touch. He is the member they trust. He is the one they watch on the news and say, "Now, that is a leader." There is a deep sense of pride, almost patriotic, even for non-Koreans, in watching him represent the youth with such dignity. However, we must address the sonic barrier that keeps him at number 5. Despite his shift towards more alternative and indie sounds with his later solo projects, the core of RM's musical identity remains rooted in hip-hop. For a 68-year-old grandmother who loves his museum vlogs, playing a track like Intro Persona or his intense collaborations with rappers can be a jarring experience. There is a disconnect between the gentle giant they see on Instagram and the Spitfire rapper they hear on Spotify. They love him, but they don't always love the music. They buy his albums as distinct art pieces to display on their coffee tables, treating them like collector's items, rather than CDs to be played on repeat during a Sunday drive. It is a love born of immense respect, rather than purely sonic enjoyment. Additionally, his lyrics, often laden with double entendres, complex philosophy, and existential angst, require a level of decoding that can be exhausting for a fan just looking for a simple melody to hum along to. He challenges them, and while many appreciate the mental stimulation, it prevents the mass, easy listening adoption we see with the members in the top 3. But do not underestimate the indigo wave. In nursing homes across Europe, there are RM book clubs, where seniors read the books he recommends. He has made reading sexy again. He has made silence loud. In 2026, he is the guardian of culture for the elderly fans, the young man who tells them that it is okay not to run, that it is okay to just look at a painting for 20 minutes. He is their validation. He sits at number 5 not because he lacks love, but because his love requires a bit of homework, a bit of study, and a bit of patience, qualities that the silver generation has in abundance, but which still makes him a slightly more niche choice compared to the universal melody makers coming up next. He is the thinking person's idol, the grandson who became a philosopher, and for the elderly fans who see their own wisdom reflected in his eyes, there is no one else who comes close. Number 4. J-Hope. If number 5 was the Museum of Silence, number 4 is the carnival of joy that every lonely heart has been desperate for, and we are screaming the name of the sun itself, Jungkook, our beloved J-Hope. In the year 2026, where the world has become increasingly digital and isolated, J-Hope has emerged not just as a dancer or a rapper, but as a global therapeutic entity for the elderly, literally referred to in geriatric psychology circles as the dopamine trigger. It is impossible to overstate the sheer, radiant power of this man's smile on the silver generation. We are looking at a ranking that defies the logic of musical genre because, let's be real, J-Hope's discography, from the grunge of Jack in the Box to the street-style beats of Hope on the Street, is technically not the typical tea time soundtrack for an 85-year-old. But here is the miracle: they listen to it anyway. Why? Because they are addicted to the spirit behind the sound. In nursing homes from the coast of California to the rural villages of Thailand, J-Hope is the happy pill. We spoke to a 79-year-old widow in Toronto who famously threw away her walking cane in a viral video from 2025 just to dance to Chicken Noodle Soup. She told us with tears in her eyes, "When I wake up, my joints hurt and the house is quiet. But then I put on Hobie, and I see his face, and I remember what it feels like to be alive." This is the sunshine effect. For a demographic that often battles with depression, isolation, and the feeling of being a burden, J-Hope represents unadulterated, non-judgmental joy. He is the grandson who walks into the room and lights up the dark corners. In 2026, the trend of Silver Street fashion has exploded, and it is entirely J-Hope's fault. You see grandfathers in their 70s trading in their beige cardigans for bright neon beanies and baggy pants, citing J-Hope's airport fashion as their inspiration. He has given them permission to be colorful again. He has told them, it is not too late to be funky. But let's dig deeper into the emotional core of this ranking. Why is he? Number 4. It is largely due to the Mama phenomenon. His song, Mama, dedicated to his mother, is an anthem that has solidified his place in the hearts of mothers and grandmothers everywhere. They see a boy who respects the women who raised him, a boy who is grateful, and in Asian cultures specifically, this filial piety makes him an untouchable saint. We found a fan club in Seoul called Hoseok's Aunts, which consists entirely of women over 60 who knit sweaters for him and donate tons of rice in his name. They don't see him as an idol, they see him as the son they wish they had, or the son they miss. Furthermore, his military service period, which ended a couple of years ago, created a massive surge in respect from the elderly male demographic. Stories of his strict but kind leadership as an assistant drill instructor circulated wildly, painting him as a real man who is disciplined yet always smiling. This duality, the fierce professional and the giggling sunshine, is magnetic. However, the reason he stops at number 4 and doesn't crack the top 3 is simply a matter of energy management. As much as they love him, J-Hope's energy is intense. His content is high-octane. For some of the oldest fans, the constant visual stimulation and the complex, layered hip-hop beats can be a bit overwhelming for daily consumption compared to the vocal line members. He is the excitement for the weekend, the burst of energy for the exercise class, but perhaps not the soothing companion for the quiet, reflective evenings that the elderly cherish so much. There is also the cool factor barrier. J-Hope is undeniably the coolest member. Steeped in street culture, and while the elderly admire it, there is a slight cultural gap where they feel they are watching a different world, a world of graffiti and breakdancing that they can't quite touch. But make no mistake, the love for J-Hope is fierce and loud. He has single-handedly increased the enrollment of seniors in dance therapy classes by 400% globally. He is the reason a 90-year-old in Brazil learned to say, "I'm your hope, you're my hope. I'm J-Hope." He is the antidote to the grayness of aging, splashing color onto the canvas of their twilight years. He sits at number 4 as the undisputed king of joy, the man who proved that you don't need to sing a slow ballad to touch an old soul, you just need to smile, like you mean it, and Jungkook means it more than anyone else on this planet. Number 3. Park Jimin. We have arrived at the podium, the holy trinity of the Silver Age, and taking the bronze medal is the man who redefined masculinity for a generation that grew up on John Wayne and Clint Eastwood, the one and only Park Jimin. If J-Hope was the vitamin that energized the body, Jimin is the warm honey milk that soothes the soul, and in 2026, his grip on the hearts of the elderly is nothing short of a spiritual phenomenon. We are talking about the Jimin effect, a term now used in social welfare programs to describe the calming influence of his voice and visuals on the geriatric population. Why is he? Number 3. Why is this global it boy the darling of the nursing home circuit? It begins with the concept of non-threatening beauty. For many elderly fans, the modern world is loud, aggressive, and scary. But then they see Jimin. They see the soft cheeks, the crescent moon eyes, the gentle tilt of his head. He triggers an immediate biological grandparent instinct. He is the mochi they want to protect, the little prince who has fallen to earth. We must discuss the Busan Prince narrative. In South Korea, and increasingly globally, Jimin is seen as the ultimate symbol of the good son. The stories of his relationship with his father, the way he revitalized his hometown of Busan, and his consistent, quiet donations to education and polio eradication have painted him as a saintly figure. We spoke to a group of grandmothers in a rural village near Busan who have never listened to a single pop song in their lives, yet they have a shrine to Jimin in their community center. When asked why, one 88-year-old woman told us, "He has the face of a boy who would never raise his voice at his mother." That sentiment is the key. In a world where they often feel disrespected or unheard, Jimin's public persona, which is built on extreme, almost archaic politeness, the 90-degree bows that he still does in 2026, even as a superstar, resonates deeply with the values of the older generation. They see him as the last guardian of respect. But let's talk about the music, because this is where the healing frequency comes in. In 2026, music therapists have actually started using Jimin's solo tracks like Serendipity, Promise, and his later acoustic ballads from his 2025 album Ethereal to treat insomnia and anxiety in dementia patients. His voice, with its unique, androgynous, airy quality, does not pierce the ear. It floats. It wraps around the listener. We found a fascinating case study in a geriatric hospital in Sweden where patients who were agitated during sundowning, a symptom of dementia, were played a loop of Jimin's a cappella singing. The results were staggering. Heart rates dropped, breathing steadied. He is literally a sonic sedative. A 94-year-old World War II survivor sent a handwritten letter to Hybe in early 2026, saying, "I have heard many sirens and bombs in my life, but this boy's voice is the first thing that made the silence feel safe again." Can you imagine the power of that? To be the safety for someone who has seen the worst of humanity? Furthermore, Jimin sits at number 3 because he bridges the gap between idol and art. The elderly demographic, especially those who appreciate high culture, ballet, and theater, are mesmerized by his dance. They don't see K-pop choreography, they see contemporary art, they see Baryshnikov, they see fluid poetry. We have reports of retired dance teachers in Russia who analyze Jimin's movement with the same reverence they would give to a Bolshoi principal dancer. He validates their love for the classics while being thoroughly modern. However, the reason he is not number 1 is a matter of genre nostalgia. While the elderly love Jimin's spirit and voice, the top 2 members on this list have tapped into specific musical genres that act as literal time machines for the 70-plus demographic. Jimin's music is beautiful, but it is still very modern, very pop R and B focused. He appeals to their heart, but the next 2 appeal to their memories. Jimin is the grandson they want to hug, the angel they pray for, and the softness they crave in a hard world. He is the member who makes them feel that the future is in gentle hands. He is the global grandson, and his position at number 3 is a testament to the power of kindness over coolness, of softness over strength. He has melted the iron hearts of the silver generation, proving that you don't need to be tough to be a hero, you just need to be lovely. Number 2. Kim Taehyung. We are holding our breath as we unveil the silver medalist, the man who sits at number 2 with an elegance that seems to defy the laws of physics and time. The one, the only, V. Kim Taehyung. If you thought modern pop music was noise to the elderly, think again, because this man has single-handedly resurrected the romance of the 1940s and 52nds, effectively becoming a time traveler for millions of seniors worldwide. In 2026, Kim Tae-young is not just a K-pop idol, he is the global reincarnation of the crooner, the spiritual successor to Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, and Chet Baker. Why is he sitting so high at number 2? The answer lies in a beautiful biological and emotional fact: the baritone resonance. Geriatric audiologists in 2026 have published papers on the V effect, noting that as human hearing ages, high frequencies are the first to fade, but deep, rich, low tones remain audible and comforting. Taehyung's voice, with its soulful, velvety depth, literally sounds clearer and warmer to an 80-year-old ear than any other pop star on the planet. He doesn't just sing to them, he vibrates in a frequency that feels like a hug. We travel to a retirement village in Tuscany, Italy, where the Taehyung Appreciation Society meets every Tuesday. These are women who grew up watching Marcello Mastroianni and Alain Delon, and they tell us with absolute certainty, this boy is not from your generation. He is from ours. They see his classic beauty, the symmetry, the longing gaze, the lack of frantic movement, and they are transported back to their own youth. He reminds them of their first loves. He is the romantic memory made flesh, but it is his musical choices that have cemented this bond. By leaning heavily into jazz, soul, and R&B with his solo works like Layover and his 2025 masterpiece Vintage Soul, V validated the musical taste of the elderly. He didn't ask them to adapt to modern noise, he walked into their world. We have reports of a massive surge in vinyl record sales among the 70-plus demographic in the UK and USA, driven entirely by the desire to own Taehyung's records. They are dusting off their old turntables because, finally, a young superstar is making music that breathes. There is a touching story from a hospice in New Orleans where a 95-year-old former jazz musician who had stopped playing his trumpet due to arthritis and depression picked up his instrument one last time after watching V play the trumpet in a video. He said, "This boy knows that the silence between the notes is just as important as the notes themselves. That is the highest praise possible." In 2026, V's fashion, the cardigans, the berets, the loose suits has become the gold standard for grandpa core fashion. But for the actual grandpas, it's just validation that they were right all along. He makes being old look stylish. He makes slow living look aspirational. Furthermore, his personality, often described as 4D or unique, reads differently to the elderly. They see a free spirit. They see a boy who chases dragonflies, who talks to flowers, who values friendship above fame. To a generation that is nearing the end of their journey, this appreciation for the small, beautiful things in life resonates profoundly. They worry less about his career stats and more about his happiness. There are online forums exclusively for fans over 65 called the Winter Bears, where they discuss his safety and well-being with a fiercely protective intensity. However, why is he number 2? Why not number 1? It is a razor-thin margin. V is the dream, the romance, the artist they admire from a distance. He is the movie star on the screen. But the member at number 1. Oh, the member at number 1 offers something slightly different. While V takes them back to the past, number 1 anchors them in the present with a type of personality that overrides music, overrides language, and hits the very core of what it means to be a family member. V is the grandson you show off to the world as a genius artist. Number 1 is the grandson you want to sit on the porch and peel tangerines with. The difference is intimacy versus awe. V holds the silver medal because he is the prince of nostalgia, the man who proved that a deep voice and a kind heart can bridge an 80-year age gap, making millions of elderly fans feel that their golden era never truly ended. It just found a new home in Kim Taehyung. Number 1. Kim Seokjin. Stop everything you are doing, put down your coffee, and prepare for the plot twist of the century, because the crown for the King of the Silver Hearts, the absolute emperor of the elderly fan base in 2026, belongs to none other than the oldest member, the visual, the fake maknae, Kim Seokjin. Are you shocked? Did you expect the deep baritone of V or the soft healing of Jimin to take the top spot? You are not alone. But when you look at the cold, hard data and the warm, fuzzy anecdotes from nursing homes, community centers, and fishing docks around the planet, Jin's supremacy is not just logical, it is inevitable. This is the victory of personality over performance, of approachability over mystique, and of trot DNA over pop polish. In 2026, Jin has achieved something no other idol has ever done. He has become a member of the family for millions of seniors who don't know a single thing about K-pop, but know everything about the handsome young man who likes to fish. Why is he? Number 1. Why does he hold the hearts of the 70, 80, and 90-year-olds in a vice grip of adoration? It starts with the Sangyeon Rai free pass phenomenon. In Korean culture, this refers to a face that is so trustworthy, so handsome, and so polite that parents would immediately approve of him for marriage. By 2026, this has gone global. We interviewed a focus group of grandmothers in a knitting circle in Ohio, USA, and they all pointed to Jin's picture and said the exact same phrase, "He looks like he would carry my groceries without being asked." That is the power of Jin. He projects an aura of traditional, respectful, clean-cut masculinity that the older generation deeply misses in modern celebrities. He isn't trying to be an edgy bad boy, he is proudly the good boy, and that safety is addictive to the elderly. But we have to talk about the super tuna effect. Do not laugh, this is serious sociology. In 2026, super tuna has evolved from a viral meme into the global anthem of senior aerobics. Go to any park in Seoul, Beijing, or even public squares in Madrid at 6 a.m., and you will see hundreds of seniors doing the super tuna choreography. It is simple, it is catchy, and it brings pure, unadulterated joy. It connected him to the trot sensibility, that specific genre of upbeat, slightly cheesy, but deeply emotional music that elderly Koreans adore. Even though he sings pop ballads, his voice has a silver voice quality, crystal clear diction, open-throated projection, and zero mumbling. Geriatric audiologists have actually noted that Jin's singing voice is the easiest for those with hearing loss to decipher because he enunciates every syllable with military precision. He is the only member whose lyrics the elderly can understand without looking at a lyric sheet. Then, there is the variety god factor. Since his discharge from the military in 2024, Jin's strategic dominance of variety shows programs often watched by older demographics, while the youth are on TikTok, has been a masterclass. He appears on fishing shows, cooking shows, and travel shows where he interacts with local elders. There is a legendary episode from 2025 where Jin spent 3 days in a remote fishing village in Iceland. He didn't act like a superstar. He acted like a clueless nephew. He cracked his famous dad jokes, which, let's be honest, are just grandpa jokes in disguise, and the local fishermen fell in love with him. He laughs at his own jokes, a trait that endears him massively to older men who do the exact same thing. He bridges the gender gap in the elderly fan base. While Jimin and V have mostly female elderly fans, Jin has an army of silver bros grandpas who see him as a drinking buddy. We have reports of Jin soju clubs in Japan where retired salarymen drink and watch his content, praising his etiquette and his ability to lighten the mood. Furthermore, let's discuss the Eat Jin legacy. For the elderly, love is food. Feeding someone is the ultimate act of care. Watching Jin eat heartily, noisily, and with genuine gustatory pleasure activates the grandma instinct to maximum overdrive. They don't want to date him. They want to feed him. They worry if his cheeks look a little less puffy. In a world where young stars are often on extreme diets, Jin's love for food makes him seem healthy, robust, and alive in a way that comforts the older generation. He represents vitality. And we cannot ignore the military pride. Being the first to enlist, the first to serve, and the first to return set a standard of duty that resonated profoundly with the conservative, patriotic elderly demographic, not just in Korea but globally among veterans. He didn't complain, he excelled. He became an assistant drill instructor. To a generation that values discipline and hierarchy, Jin is the gold standard of a proper man. But the true secret to his #1 spot is his emotional transparency. Jin often talks about his fears, his aging, and his desire to just be happy without immense pressure. This lazy genius vibe resonates with retirees who are done with the rat race. He validates their desire to rest. He tells them, it's okay to just lie down and play games. He removes the guilt of being unproductive. In 2026, he is the companion who sits on the porch with them, cracks a lame joke, laughs a windshield wiper laugh, and makes the sunset feel a little less lonely. He is #1 because he is the most human. He doesn't feel like a distant star in the sky. He feels like the grandson who just walked through the front door asking, "Grandma, is dinner ready?" And for the millions of elderly fans waiting for that knock, Kim Seokjin is the only answer that matters.